To our amazing Cheating Tales Lab family, welcome and thank you for joining us. Your support means the world. Quick question. Where are you listening from today? Which city? Which country? Drop it below. Now, let's dive into today's story. Benning's training grounds. Kenneth Hayes watched his special operations trainees complete their final exercise of the day. At 45, his weathered face bore the marks of countless deployments, but his eyes remained sharp, missing nothing as the soldiers navigated the obstacle course. "Looking good out there, sir," Staff Sergeant Rodriguez commented, clipboard in hand. "This batch might be your best yet." Kenneth nodded, pride warming his chest. After 23 years in the service, training elite units had become more than just a job. It was his legacy. "They're getting there, Rodriguez. But let's see how they handle tomorrow's night ops scenario." His phone buzzed in his pocket, and he smiled at the notification. Gloria had sent a photo of herself and Cassandra at their favorite cafe in Columbus. His wife's golden hair caught the sunlight, and his stepdaughter's law school textbooks were spread across the table between their coffee cups. The sight made his heart swell. At 45, he had everything he'd ever wanted. "Family time calling, sir." Rodriguez grinned knowingly. "Just the usual check-in," Kenneth replied, typing a quick response. "Looking beautiful, ladies. Save me some of those blueberry scones you love, Gloria." The next morning found Kenneth in the base's cybersecurity training center, where Nicholas Wilkerson, a former NSA specialist with a reputation for brutal honesty, was conducting a mandatory session on digital vulnerabilities. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Nicholas paced before the assembled officers. "Your personal devices are your biggest weakness," Nicholas declared. "One sync, one automatic backup, one careless moment. That's all it takes for your entire digital life to become an open book." Kenneth sat in the back row, laptop open as instructed. At 45, he sometimes felt like a dinosaur among the younger officers who treated technology like an extension of their bodies. But he prided himself on staying current, on leading by example. "Now, I'm going to demonstrate a common vulnerability," Nicholas continued, his fingers flying across his keyboard. "Please connect your phones to your laptops using the procedure I've outlined. This will show you exactly how easily your private information can be." The words died in Nicholas's throat as he glanced at Kenneth's screen, which had been projected onto the main display as an example. A series of text messages populated the screen, synchronized from Kenneth's phone. "Gloria, just got back from Dr. C's. Everything's good with the baby. Uncle James is over the moon. Cassandra, Mom, wrong chat? Delete it quick. Gloria, oh God, I'm sorry honey. Kenneth's in training all day, right? Cassandra, yes, but be careful. We need to stick to the other app for these conversations." The room fell silent. Kenneth stared at the messages, his mind refusing to process their meaning. The younger officers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, the air growing thick with tension. Nicholas cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should take a 5-minute break." His voice sounded distant, as if coming through water. Kenneth's fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly. With mechanical precision, he screenshots the conversation before the messages disappeared. His training kicked in. Secure the intelligence, analyze the data, plan the operation. But this wasn't a military exercise. This was his life, unraveling in front of 23 fellow officers. Captain Sarachun, who had served under Kenneth in Afghanistan, approached his desk. "Sir, do you need?" "I'm fine, Captain," Kenneth cut her off, his voice steady despite the roaring in his ears. "Just a misunderstanding, I'm sure." But even as he spoke the words, his mind was racing through the past months, years even. The late-night phone calls Gloria claimed were from her sister. The sudden trips to Atlanta for shopping. Cassandra's increasingly nervous behavior around him. As the other officers filed out for the break, Nicholas lingered. "Kenneth," he said softly, "I've seen enough digital trails in my NSA days to know this isn't the first message of its kind." Kenneth looked up at the former intelligence operative, seeing not pity but professional recognition of a security breach. "Can you help me?" he asked quietly. Nicholas glanced at the door to ensure their privacy. "There's someone you should talk to. Russ Park. He used to work military intelligence before going private. Here's his number." He scribbled on a piece of paper. He's discreet, thorough, and he understands the unique challenges of our community. Kenneth pocketed the number, his military training already formulating a strategy. He thought of James Carlson, Uncle James as Gloria had always called him, the childhood friend who had become such a fixture in their lives. James, whose law firm handled sensitive cases for military families. James, who was connected to Colonel Bert Alvarado through marriage, making him virtually untouchable in their social circle. One more thing, Nicholas added, pulling a small device from his briefcase. Use this burner phone for any sensitive communications. Your regular phone and email are likely compromised if they've been careful about this. The rest of the training session passed in a blur. Kenneth maintained his composure, years of special operations experience helping him compartmentalize the emotional tsunami threatening to overwhelm him. He even managed to ask relevant questions about digital security, his mind cataloging every technique that might help him uncover the truth. That evening, as he drove home, he took a detour to a small park where he and Gloria had once spent Sunday afternoons. Pulling out the burner phone, he dialed Russ Park's number. "Park Investigations," a gruff voice answered. "Mr. Park, my name is Kenneth Hayes. Nicholas Wilkerson suggested I call you." There was a pause. Nick mentioned you might be reaching out. Military matter? Personal. But with military complications, those are often the messiest kind, Russ replied. "Tomorrow, 0700, Waffle House on Victory Drive. Come alone. Pay cash. No phones." Kenneth agreed and ended the call, staring at his reflection in the rearview mirror. The man looking back at him wasn't just a betrayed husband. He was a special operations trainer who had spent his career teaching others how to uncover hidden threats. Now, he would use every skill, every resource, and every connection he had to expose the truth, no matter the cost. As he finally drove home, he prepared himself to face Gloria and Cassandra, to pretend he hadn't seen the messages that had shattered his world. He was about to undertake the most difficult covert operation of his career, investigating his own family. The Waffle House on Victory Drive hunched against the dawn like a yellow-lit bunker. Kenneth arrived 10 minutes early, choosing a booth with clear sightlines to all exits. Old habits die hard. He ordered coffee, black, and waited. Russ Park wasn't what he expected. The investigator wore a pressed button-down shirt and wire-rimmed glasses, looking more like an accountant than a former intelligence officer. But Kenneth recognized the tactical awareness in how Park scanned the restaurant before sliding into the booth. "Your coffee's terrible," Park commented, waving away the waitress. "Tell me why I'm here at this ungodly hour." Kenneth slid his phone across the table, showing the screenshot from yesterday's training session. Park studied it, his expression unchanging. "James Carlson," Kenneth explained quietly. "My wife's childhood friend, brother-in-law to Colonel Bert Alvarado. His law firm handles cases for half the officers on base." Park pulled out a small notebook. "The military connection complicates things. How deep does it go?" "That's what I need to know." Kenneth leaned forward. "I need everything, financial records, phone logs, travel history. Whatever it takes." "It'll be expensive," Park warned. "And messy. Military communities are tight-knit. One wrong move could blow back on your career." "Money's not an issue." Kenneth passed over an envelope. "First installment. Just find the truth." Park pocketed the envelope without counting it. "Give me 2 weeks." "And Kenneth?" His eyes hardened. "Don't do anything stupid in the meantime. Act normal. These types of operations require patience." The next 14 days were an exercise in self-control. Kenneth maintained his routine, training exercises, staff meetings, dinner with Gloria. He watched his wife with new eyes, noting how she always kept her phone face down, how she took calls in the garden, how her smile seemed calculated rather than warm. Cassandra visited for Sunday dinner, her law school studies providing convenient excuses for her distraction. Kenneth observed his stepdaughter's nervous energy, the way she checked her phone constantly, how she steered conversations away from any mention of James or his law firm. On day 15, Park called from a blocked number. "Coffee. Same place. 1 hour. This time, Park brought a thick folder. "You might want something stronger than coffee for this," he said, ordering 2 plates of eggs to discourage interruptions. The evidence was devastating. During Kenneth's deployment 2 years ago, Gloria had been admitted to Piedmont Hospital in Atlanta under a false name. The attending physician, Dr. Lorraine Cook, had a history of handling private adoptions for wealthy clients. "Here's where it gets interesting," Park said, spreading out financial documents. 3 days after the birth, a baby boy was adopted by Florence Kinney in Tennessee. Florence is James's cousin, runs some fancy charitable foundation that gets heavy donations from military families. Kenneth's hands clenched around his coffee cup. The foundation? Military Family Support Alliance. Park slid over more papers. Looks legitimate on the surface. But I traced the money. Large sums moving between accounts, eventually ending up offshore. The Caymans, specifically. "Show me everything," Kenneth demanded. For the next 2 hours, they dissected the evidence. Bank statements showed regular payments to Gloria through shell companies. Travel records placed her in Atlanta monthly, coinciding with Foundation Board meetings. Phone logs revealed hundreds of calls between Gloria, James, and Florence Kinney. "There's more," Park added reluctantly. "Your stepdaughter's internship at Humphrey International?" Lorenzo Humphrey sits on the Foundation's board. The position was arranged by James personally. Kenneth thought of Cassandra's sudden career success, her expensive apartment, her new car. All pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known he was solving. "What do you recommend?" Kenneth asked, his military training helping him focus on strategy rather than emotion. Park closed the folder carefully. "You need a team. This is bigger than a domestic issue now. We're looking at potential fraud, money laundering, maybe worse. I've got a contact, Maddie Solomon, forensic accountant. She flagged some suspicious transactions at the foundation last year before being quietly dismissed." "Set up a meeting," Kenneth ordered. "And Park? Keep digging. I want to know everyone involved in this network." As Kenneth drove home that evening, his mind raced with implications. James wasn't just his wife's lover. He was the architect of something much larger, using military families' trust to build his empire of deception. At home, Gloria was preparing dinner, humming softly. "You're late," she said, kissing his cheek. "Everything okay at the base?" "Just fine," Kenneth replied, forcing a smile. "How was your day?" "Oh, the usual. Book club, then lunch with the colonel's wife." She stirred the pasta sauce. "James might stop by later. He has some papers for you to sign for that investment we discussed." Kenneth watched her lie so effortlessly, wondering how many times he had missed the signs. "Actually, I have an early morning tomorrow. Papers can wait, if you're sure." Gloria's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it reflexively. "Oh, Cassandra can't make it to dinner either. Big case at the firm." "Of course," Kenneth said, each word tasting like ash. "She's been so busy lately." That night, lying beside his sleeping wife, Kenneth made a decision. This wasn't just about his marriage anymore. Somewhere in Tennessee, a 2-year-old boy carried his DNA. And around him, a network of trusted military families was being systematically exploited. He reached for his burner phone and texted Park, "Set up the meeting with Solomon. Time to expand the operation." The meeting with Maddie Solomon took place in an underground parking garage in downtown Columbus, the kind of location that would have seemed melodramatic if Kenneth hadn't already uncovered so many layers of deception. The forensic accountant was a small woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Hayes," she said, extending her hand. "I've been expecting someone to come asking questions about the foundation." They moved to her car, an unremarkable sedan with tinted windows. Russ Park sat in the back, maintaining surveillance of the entrance. "Show him," Park instructed. Maddie opened her laptop, displaying spreadsheets that tracked years of financial movements. "The foundation's legitimate on paper," she explained. "They really do help military families. That's what makes it so perfect as a cover. But look here." She highlighted a series of transactions. Regular payments to 12 different military spouses, including your wife, all disguised as charitable contributions. The amounts vary, but the pattern is consistent. Monthly deposits, usually following foundation events or board meetings. Kenneth studied the numbers, his military training helping him detect the pattern. "These spouses, what do they have in common?" "Access," Maddie said grimly. "Their husbands or wives hold positions of influence. command positions, intelligence roles, procurement officers. The foundation isn't just moving money, it's buying information. Park leaned forward. Tell him about the internship program. Maddie pulled up another file. The foundation runs a prestigious internship program, placing military family members in top firms. Your stepdaughter's position at Humphrey International? She's one of 20 similar placements, all in companies with defense contracts or military connections. Lorenzo Humphrey, Kenneth murmured. James arranged Cassandra's internship personally. Humphrey's firm handles millions in military-related contracts, Maddie confirmed. And James's law firm oversees all the paperwork. It's a closed circle. The foundation identifies vulnerable families, offers help through charity or career opportunities, then leverages those relationships for information and influence. Kenneth's mind raced through implications. The baby, my son. Why involve Florence Kinney? Leverage, Park interjected. A secret child, adopted through questionable channels? That's insurance. Florence's foundation isn't just a money laundering operation. It's a repository of secrets. Everyone involved has something to lose if it comes crashing down. Maddie nodded. I found evidence of at least 3 other private adoptions arranged through the same network. All military families, all handled with extreme discretion. And all that information, Kenneth realized, flows through James's law firm, which is why they went after your family, Park added. Your position as a special operations trainer, your connections at Fort Benning, you're valuable to them. Gloria's pregnancy wasn't just an accident. It was an opportunity. Kenneth stood, pacing the confined space of the parking garage. We need more. Bank records, adoption papers, everything you can find on Florence Kinney's operation. Already working on it, Maddie assured him. But Kenneth? Be careful. When I started asking questions about the foundation's finances, I received a very generous severance package and a very clear warning. These people protect their interests. They're counting on military loyalty, Park observed. The code of silence, the brotherhood. They exploit it. Kenneth thought of his trainees, of the values he instilled in them. Honor, integrity, sacrifice. This network wasn't just betraying him. It was betraying everything the military community stood for. One more thing, Maddie added, pulling out a final document. Cassandra's not just covering for her mother. Look at her foundation duties. The paper detailed Cassandra's role in client relations. She wasn't just an intern. She was actively gathering information about wealthy military families, identifying potential targets for the foundation's operations. My stepdaughter, Kenneth said quietly, is a recruiter for their scheme. She's good at it too, Park commented. Young, attractive, from a military family herself. She has credibility. And her position at Humphreys gives her access to sensitive information about defense contracts. Kenneth absorbed this final betrayal, his tactical mind already shifting from discovery to strategy. We need to move carefully, he decided. This isn't just about exposing a scandal. We're dealing with military families, careers, and lives that could be destroyed. I've seen operations like this before, Park said, leaning against his car. They start small, a favor here, a secret there. Before you know it, everyone's compromised. The question is, where do we start unraveling it? Maddie closed her laptop with a decisive click. Follow the money. The Foundation's next fundraising event is in 3 weeks. All the major players will be there. James, Florence, the military spouses involved in the scheme, including Gloria, Kenneth added, his jaw tightening. She never misses a Foundation event. It's not just the events, Maddie explained, pulling out another file. Every month, there are board meetings in Atlanta. Gloria attends as a community liaison. But look at the expense reports. She pointed to several highlighted lines. Hotel rooms, romantic restaurants, all paid through the Foundation's accounts. Kenneth's fists clenched involuntarily. James' arrangements? Like clockwork, Park confirmed. Same hotel every time. The Georgian Terrace. Always booked under the Foundation's name for charitable planning sessions. A text message lit up Kenneth's burner phone. It was from Gloria, working late with the Foundation committee. Don't wait up. Love you. She's with him now, isn't she? Kenneth asked, although he already knew the answer. Park nodded grimly. They've been at the Capital City Club for the last hour. Foundation dinner, officially. Kenneth stared at the phone, years of military discipline keeping his voice steady. Show me everything you have on Cassandra's involvement. Every meeting, every document, every connection to Humphrey International. Maddie spread out more papers across the car hood. She's clever. Uses her law school credentials to gain trust. Here's a list of her recent targets. All military families with high-level clearances or significant financial resources. The list made Kenneth's blood run cold. He recognized many of the names, officers he'd trained, families he'd welcomed into his home. She's been gathering intelligence on them and feeding it back to James's network, Park added. The Foundation uses this information to tailor their approach. They know exactly which families are vulnerable, which ones have secrets worth exploiting. But why? Kenneth demanded. Money laundering isn't enough to justify this level of organization. Maddie exchanged a look with Park before answering. We think the Foundation is just the tip of the iceberg. These military connections, the classified information they're gathering, it's worth far more than just money. Someone's building a network of influence within the military community. Kenneth thought of all the training sessions he'd conducted, all the sensitive information he'd had access to. Had Gloria been mining him for intelligence all along? Had every intimate conversation been reported back to James and his associates? I need surveillance on all of them, he decided. Gloria, James, Cassandra, everyone involved in this operation, already in place, Park assured him. But Kenneth, you need to maintain your cover. Any change in your behavior could alert them. I've spent my career training others for covert operations, Kenneth said quietly. I think it's time I put those skills to use myself. As they packed up their evidence, Maddie handed Kenneth one final document. This arrived at my office yesterday. A financial transfer from the Foundation to a new account in the Caymans. $5 million, authorized by James and Florence. They're moving money, Park observed. Something big is coming. Kenneth tucked the document into his jacket. Then we better be ready. Set up secure communications between us. From now on, we operate like any other covert mission. Compartmentalized information, regular check-ins, contingency plans. As he drove home that night, Kenneth's military training kicked in fully. He wasn't just a betrayed husband anymore. He was an operator working to expose a network that had infiltrated the heart of the military community. Every dinner with Gloria, every conversation with Cassandra, every interaction with their social circle would be part of his counterintelligence operation. His phone buzzed with a message from Gloria. On my way home. Picked up your favorite wine. Love you. Kenneth allowed himself a grim smile. Two could play at this game of deception. He'd let them think they still had him fooled while he gathered his evidence and built his case. The Foundation, James's law firm, Humphrey International. Their whole network was about to learn a painful lesson about underestimating a special operations trainer. Message received, he texted back. Can't wait to hear about your evening. In the darkness of his car, Kenneth reviewed his mental checklist. Park would handle surveillance. Maddie would trace the money, and he would maintain his cover, playing the role of the trusting husband while he worked to expose the truth. The next few weeks would test everything he'd learned in his military career, and everything he thought he knew about love, loyalty, and betrayal. The late October rain drummed against the windows of Kenneth's office at Fort Benning. 3 weeks had passed since his meeting with Maddie Solomon, and each day brought new revelations about the Foundation's reach. He stared at the latest surveillance photos from Park. Gloria entering the Georgian Terrace Hotel, James Carlson following 20 minutes later. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Captain Sarachun, who had witnessed the initial message revelation during the cybersecurity training, stood in the doorway. Sir, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent. Sarah's expression conveyed more than her words. She's waiting in the visitor's lot. Asked specifically not to come inside. Kenneth checked his sidearm out of habit. Name? Yvette Courtney. The name hit like a physical blow. James Carlson's wife. Kenneth had met her dozens of times at Foundation events, watched her smile and laugh while her husband built his web of deception. Thank you, Captain. I'll handle this. The visitor's lot was empty except for a black Mercedes with tinted windows. As Kenneth approached, the back door opened. Yvette Courtney stepped out, But she wasn't alone. Another woman emerged from the driver's seat, tall, professional, with the sharp eyes of someone used to noticing details. Kenneth. Yvette's voice trembled slightly. This is Dina Hammond. She used to work for James's firm. We need to talk. Not here, Kenneth replied, scanning the area. Follow me. He led them to a small diner off base, choosing a booth in the back corner. The waitress knew him. He'd been coming here for years with Gloria. The thought tasted bitter now. I know what you've been investigating, Yvette said without preamble, her manicured fingers wrapping around a coffee cup. About the foundation, about James and Gloria. Dina Hammond placed a thick manila envelope on the table. I was a paralegal at Carlson & Associates for 6 years. Last spring, I discovered files that didn't add up. Client accounts with irregular payments, military family cases with suspicious settlements. They paid you off, Kenneth stated. Not a question. $500,000 and an ironclad NDA. Dina's laugh was hollow. I took it, moved to Savannah, tried to forget what I'd seen. Then Yvette found me. Yvette pulled out her phone, hands shaking. I wasn't supposed to be at the doctor's office that day. James thought I was in Atlanta for a foundation event. But I saw her, Kenneth. Gloria. She's pregnant again. The words hung in the air like smoke. Kenneth's military training kicked in, keeping his expression neutral even as his mind raced through calculations. For months, Yvette continued. James was in Colorado with me 5 months ago. He's not even trying to hide it anymore. Dina opened the envelope, spreading documents across the table. These are copies of what I found. James has been using military family cases to gather intelligence, personal information, financial records, security clearance details. Anything that could be valuable. The foundation's just a front, Yvette added. They target vulnerable families, offer help through James's firm, then use that information for leverage. The charitable donations? They're payments for silence. Kenneth studied the documents, his tactical mind cataloging every detail. Why come forward now? Yvette's perfectly maintained facade cracked. Because I'm done being part of it. Last week, I overheard James on the phone with Lorenzo Humphrey. They're planning something big, Kenneth. Something that could hurt a lot of families. And I can't live with what I know anymore, Dina added. That NDA doesn't mean much when there's federal fraud involved. A text buzzed on Kenneth's phone, Park's regular check-in. He ignored it, focusing on the women across from him. Coming here was dangerous, he said quietly. For both of you. We're careful, Dina assured him. I still have friends at the firm. They tell me when documents are being accessed, when questions are being asked. James doesn't know we're here. Yvette reached across the table, her fingers brushing Kenneth's arm. There's something else you should know. About Cassandra. Kenneth tensed. His stepdaughter had been avoiding him lately, citing increased workload at Humphrey International. She's not just an intern, Yvette explained. James has been grooming her for years. The law school recommendations, the prestigious internship, it was all part of the plan. She has access to military families through you, connections through the foundation. She's their perfect asset, Dina finished. Young, smart, from a respected military family. Who would suspect her? The diner's fluorescent lights suddenly seemed too bright, the booth too small. Kenneth thought of all the times Cassandra had asked about his colleagues, shown interest in his work. Had every conversation been intelligence gathering? I need proof, he said finally. Everything you have on James's operation, the firm's involvement, all of it. Dina patted the envelope. It's all here. Bank records, client files, foundation documents. But Kenneth? Her eyes met his. Be careful how you use it. These people, they don't just ruin careers. They destroy lives. Yvette glanced at her watch. We should go. James has a board meeting tonight, but he notices when I'm gone too long. As they stood to leave, Yvette pressed a key into Kenneth's hand. Lake House, Old River Road. We can meet there safely. No cameras, no phones, no connections to James or the foundation. Kenneth watched them drive away, the manila envelope heavy in his jacket. The rain had stopped, but the air felt charged with electricity, like the moment before a storm breaks. His phone buzzed again. Park, then Maddie. They'd want to know about this development. But first, he needed to process what he'd learned. His wife, pregnant with another man's child. His stepdaughter, a willing participant in the deception. And now, two unlikely allies offering a way to bring it all down. He drove back to base slowly, mind already formulating plans. This wasn't just about his family anymore. With evidence of federal fraud and exploitation of military families, he could build a case that would expose the entire network. In his office, Kenneth secured the documents in his safe, then made 3 calls. The first to Park, they needed surveillance on the lake house. The second to Maddie, she'd want to analyze these new financial records. The third to Captain Chen. Sarah, he said when she answered. Remember that cybersecurity training where this all started? I need your help with something. The lake house on Old River Road became their war room. Kenneth sat at a weathered oak table, surrounded by his hastily assembled team. Russ Park leaned against the fireplace, his usual pressed shirt replaced by tactical gear. Maddie Solomon had commandeered one wall, covering it with financial diagrams and transaction logs. The Foundation's network is more extensive than we thought, Maddie explained, tapping a complex flowchart. Every major military base in the Southeast has connections. They're not just gathering intelligence, they're building influence. We need more than just financial records, Park interjected. If we're going after people this connected, we need ironclad evidence of criminal activity. Kenneth nodded to the newest additions to their team. That's where you come in. Ignacio Russell, a military prosecutor with a reputation for taking down corrupt officers, studied the evidence spread across the table. Financial fraud, exploitation of military families, possible national security implications. This is bigger than a local case. The digital trail is extensive, Dana Hansen added. The cybersecurity expert had been monitoring the Foundation's communications since Sarah Chan brought her in. They're using encrypted channels, but they're getting sloppy. Confident no one's watching. Clifford Bird, a former JAG officer with salt and pepper hair, picked up one of Dina's documents. These client files alone show a pattern of legal malpractice. But it's the military connection that makes it federal. They're not just exploiting families. They're potentially compromising operational security. Kenneth stood, moving to the window. Outside, the lake reflected the afternoon sun, deceptively peaceful. Walk me through what we know. Maddie took the lead, her forensic accountant's precision evident in every word. The Foundation identifies vulnerable military families through James's law firm. They offer help, legal assistance, financial support, career opportunities. Once families are indebted to them, the real operation begins. Information gathering, Park continued. They collect everything, personal secrets, financial details, base operations, deployment schedules. Anything that could be valuable or damaging, Ignacio added. These files show at least dozen cases where they've used compromising information for leverage. Dana pulled up data on her laptop. The digital footprint is fascinating. They're using a combination of legitimate Foundation communications and encrypted channels. Messages about charitable contributions are actually coded updates about information gathering. And Cassandra? Kenneth asked, the name still painful to say. She's their star recruiter, Clifford confirmed. Young, connected, above suspicion. Her position at Humphrey International gives her access to defense contract information, while her military family background opens doors on base. Kenneth absorbed this, his tactical mind already formulating strategies. We need to coordinate our approach. Dana, focus on their digital communications. Maddie, keep tracking the money. Ignacio, build the legal framework for prosecution. What about surveillance? Park asked. They're getting suspicious. Gloria's been asking questions about your late nights at the office. Let her, Kenneth replied. In fact, let's give them something to watch. Dana, can you create a digital trail? Make it look like I'm working on a classified project? The cybersecurity expert smiled. Already on it. I've been planting breadcrumbs, late-night access to secure servers, encrypted communications with non-existent contacts. They'll see exactly what we want them to see. Be careful, Clifford warned. These people are well-connected. One wrong move could alert them. That's why we need leverage, Ignacio said. Something big enough to make them sloppy. Kenneth turned back to the group. The Foundation's hosting a fundraiser next month. All the key players will be there. James, Florence, Lorenzo Humphrey. Even Gloria's on the planning committee. Perfect opportunity, Park mused. But we need more than just evidence. We need them to incriminate themselves. They're already doing that, Dana reported, showing her screen. Look at these communications between James and Humphrey. They're planning something major, moving money, preparing documents. They think they're untouchable. That's their weakness, Maddie realized. They're so confident in their position, their military connections. They're getting careless. Kenneth studied the latest surveillance photos. Gloria entering James's office, Cassandra meeting with Lorenzo Humphrey, Florence Kinney making late-night visits to the Foundation's headquarters. Here's what we do, he decided. We let them think I'm working on something classified, something valuable enough to get their attention. Dana, create a digital trail they can't resist following. I can do better than that, the cybersecurity expert offered. I can make it look like you're developing a new training program, something that would give them access to every special operations unit in the country. Perfect, Ignacio approved. They'll want that information badly enough to take risks. Meanwhile, Maddie added, I'll keep tracking their financial movements. They're preparing for something big. Let's find out what. Kenneth moved to the evidence wall, studying the complex web of relationships and transactions. Park, I need surveillance on all of them. Every meeting, every phone call, every email. Already happening, the investigator assured him. They're not as careful as they think. Clifford, prepare the legal groundwork. When this breaks, I want everything ready for federal prosecution. The former JAG officer nodded grimly. I'll coordinate with contacts at the Justice Department. Quietly, as the team dispersed to their tasks, Kenneth remained at the window, watching the sun set over the lake. Somewhere in Atlanta, his wife was probably with James, planning their next move. His stepdaughter was using her position to gather intelligence on military families. And he was here, orchestrating their downfall. One more thing, he called out. Everything we discuss stays in this room. No phones, no computers, no outside contact. We operate like any other covert mission. Compartmentalized information, need-to-know basis. They nodded, understanding the stakes. This wasn't just about exposing corruption. It was about protecting military families who had been exploited, manipulated, and betrayed. As darkness fell, Kenneth reviewed their progress. The pieces were in place. Financial tracking, digital surveillance, legal preparation. Now they just needed the right moment, the perfect opportunity to expose the entire network. His phone buzzed, a message from Gloria. Foundation fundraiser planning meeting tomorrow. Don't wait up. Kenneth allowed himself a grim smile. They thought they were the ones watching, manipulating, controlling. They had no idea they were the ones being hunted. The Foundation's annual fundraiser transformed the Columbus Convention Center into a glittering showcase of military philanthropy. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in navy blue, while uniformed officers mingled with wealthy donors. Kenneth adjusted his bow tie, watching the players take their positions. Gloria floated through the crowd in a silver evening gown, every inch the devoted military wife and Foundation board member. James Carlson worked the room with practiced charm, his law firm's success evident in his custom tuxedo and confident smile. Florence Kinney held court near the stage, accepting praise for her charitable work while Lorenzo Humphrey nodded approvingly at her side. Everything in place? Kenneth murmured into his champagne glass. Dana's voice came through his nearly invisible earpiece. Digital Trail is hot. They've been accessing your classified files for the past week. James and Humphrey had 3 late-night meetings about it. Foundation accounts are active, Maddie added from her position at the surveillance hub they'd established in a nearby hotel room. Large transfers coming in from their Cayman accounts. They're consolidating resources. Kenneth moved through the crowd, playing his role perfectly. He'd spent weeks laying the groundwork, dropping hints about a revolutionary new training program he was developing. The bait was irresistible: direct access to special operations methodology, training protocols, and personnel data. Incoming, Park warned through the earpiece. Your wife, 2 o'clock. Gloria appeared at his side, her perfume achingly familiar. Darling, you've been so busy lately. The foundation board was just saying how much they appreciate your dedication to the military community. Kenneth smiled, seeing the calculation behind her warm expression. Just doing my part. In fact, I have an announcement to make later. He felt her interest sharpen. Oh, you didn't mention anything. Been keeping it under wraps. Something special for the foundation. He watched her eyes flick toward James, who was pretending not to watch them. The trap was baited. Cassandra's here, Park reported. Meeting with Humphrey near the bar. Kenneth turned slightly, catching sight of his stepdaughter in a sophisticated black dress, leaning close to Lorenzo Humphrey. Once, he would have seen a promising young lawyer networking at a charity event. Now he recognized the subtle art of intelligence gathering. They're moving, Dana reported. Electronic surveillance shows increased activity on their secure channels. They're discussing your project. The evening progressed according to plan. Kenneth moved through the crowd, dropping carefully crafted hints about his classified project. He watched James and Humphrey exchange meaningful glances, saw Florence Kinney make a discreet phone call, noticed Gloria's increased attention to his every word. Financial alerts coming in, Maddie announced. They're accessing emergency funds. Big movements from the Cayman accounts. Legal team standing by. Clifford added from his position in the mobile command center. Kenneth approached the stage as dinner wound down. The trap was set, each player positioned exactly where they needed to be. He took the microphone, scanning the room full of military families, some innocent, some complicit, all about to witness the exposure of a sophisticated criminal enterprise. Distinguished guests, he began. I have an announcement to make. The Foundation has done remarkable work supporting our military community. That's why I've decided to make a substantial donation. He felt the room's attention sharpen, saw James and Florence exchange quick glances. Gloria beamed from her seat, but her fingers drummed nervously on the tablecloth. After reviewing the Foundation's outstanding work, Kenneth continued, I've decided to contribute not just funds, but something more valuable. Access to our new Special Operations training protocols. A murmur ran through the crowd. Lorenzo Humphrey leaned forward in his chair, his usual poker face slipping just enough to show intense interest. The program I've been developing, Kenneth explained, activating the presentation screen behind him, represents years of military expertise. Training methodologies, personnel assessments, operational guidelines, everything the Foundation would need to expand its support of military families. He clicked through slides filled with carefully crafted information. Just enough truth to be credible, just enough classified markers to be irresistible. Through his earpiece, he heard Dana's satisfied whisper. They're accessing the digital files now. Multiple attempts to penetrate the secured sections. James Carlson stood, raising his glass. A remarkable gesture, Kenneth. The Foundation would be honored to. I'm not finished. Kenneth's voice cut through the room like a blade. Before we proceed, I think we should discuss exactly how the Foundation uses its resources. The offshore accounts, the surveillance operations, the exploitation of military families. The room went deadly silent. Florence Kinney's face drained of color. Gloria's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. I know everything, Kenneth continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. The baby born 2 years ago at Piedmont Hospital. The payments to military spouses for intelligence gathering. The manipulation of legal cases through Carlson and Associates. James started forward, but stopped as the ballroom doors opened. Elegant woman in an evening gown entered. Someone who'd been circulating at Foundation events for months as a wealthy military widow. Federal Agent Elvira Harrison, she announced, her badge glinting under the chandeliers. I believe we have some matters to discuss. The room erupted in chaos. Florence Kinney's phone clattered to the floor as she tried to delete files. Lorenzo Humphrey made a move toward the side exit, but found Park waiting there. Cassandra, her face ashen, gripped the edge of her table. The Foundation's accounts have been frozen, Maddie's voice reported through the earpiece. They're trying to access the Cayman transfers, but we've got it all locked down. Gloria stood slowly, her silver dress catching the light. Kenneth, she whispered, you don't understand. We were helping people. The Foundation was stealing from the people who trusted you, Kenneth finished. Using their secrets, their vulnerabilities, their faith in the military community, Agent Harrison's team moved efficiently through the crowd, securing key players. James Carlson's usual smooth confidence crumbled as he was read his rights. Florence Kinney began sobbing about the children we helped, while Lorenzo Humphrey demanded his lawyer. Kenneth watched it all from the stage, his military training helping him maintain composure. Through his earpiece, he heard his team coordinating with federal agents, securing evidence, ensuring nothing could be deleted or destroyed. Cassandra approached the stage, tears streaming down her face. "Dad," she started, using the name she'd stopped calling him months ago. "I never meant. I didn't know at first." "We'll talk later," Kenneth said quietly. "Right now, you need to cooperate with Agent Harrison." The elaborate trap had sprung perfectly. Every player was in position, every piece of evidence secured, every escape route blocked. As he watched federal agents escort James and Gloria towards separate vehicles, Kenneth felt no satisfaction, only a deep sadness for the trust that had been broken, the lives that had been manipulated, the bonds that had been betrayed. Agent Harrison appeared at his side. "Clean operation," she commented professionally. "Your team's intel was impeccable. We've got enough evidence to unravel this network completely." Kenneth nodded, watching the last of the shocked guests being interviewed by federal agents. The chandeliers still sparkled, the tables still gleamed with expensive china, but the facade of charitable giving had been shattered beyond repair. "Your wife," Harrison said carefully, "she's requesting to speak with you." "Not tonight," Kenneth replied. "Tonight, we focus on securing everything they tried to hide. The real work is just beginning." Through his earpiece, he heard his team continuing their tasks. Dana tracking digital footprints, Maddie following money trails, Park securing physical evidence. The trap hadn't just exposed the corruption. It had captured every detail, every connection, every betrayal. The elaborate operation was complete, but Kenneth knew this was just the beginning of a much longer process. As he looked out over the chaos of the raided fundraiser, he thought of all the military families who had been exploited, all the trust that had been abused, all the damage that would need to be repaired. The night air was cool as he finally stepped outside, watching federal agents load the last of the evidence into secure vehicles. His team's voices were still coordinating in his earpiece, but for a moment, he allowed himself to feel the full weight of what they'd accomplished and what it had cost. The morning after the Foundation raid dawned cold and gray over Fort Benning. Television trucks crowded the base entrance, their satellite dishes reaching skyward like metal flowers. Inside his office, Kenneth watched CNN replay clips of James Carlson and Florence Kinney being escorted from the fundraiser in handcuffs. "Military charity scandal rocks Fort Benning." The headline crawled across the screen. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the story broke. Colonel Bert Alvarado had already called 3 times, his messages growing increasingly desperate as the extent of his brother-in-law's corruption became public. A knock at his door revealed Captain Sarah Chun, her usual crisp demeanor softened by concern. "Sir, the FBI's forensic team needs access to the Foundation's office on base." "Give them whatever they need," Kenneth replied, his voice rough from a sleepless night. "And Sarah? Thank you for everything." She nodded, understanding flowing between them. Her quick thinking during that fateful cybersecurity training had started this whole investigation. "The military community's in shock," she said quietly. "Nobody saw this coming." "Well, almost nobody." She managed a small smile. Kenneth's computer chimed with a new email, an urgent message from the base commander requesting his presence at an emergency briefing. As he gathered his materials, his office phone lit up again. Gloria's lawyer, this time. The military police escort parted the sea of reporters as Kenneth made his way to headquarters. Inside, the normally bustling corridors were unnaturally quiet, officers and enlisted personnel alike speaking in hushed tones. The briefing room was packed with senior staff when Kenneth entered. Colonel Matthews, the base commander, stood at the podium, his face grave. "The FBI has confirmed what we feared." Matthews began without preamble. The Foundation wasn't just laundering money. They were collecting classified information. Every military family they helped was carefully selected for their access to sensitive data. Agent Elvira Harrison stepped forward, her federal badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. We've seized the Foundation servers. The scope of their intelligence gathering is significant. They had files on deployment schedules, base security protocols, personnel assignments, anything that could be valuable to interested parties. How did we miss this? Major Thompson demanded from the back row. They operated right under our noses. Because they used our own values against us, Kenneth answered, standing. Trust, loyalty, taking care of our own. They exploited everything that makes our military community strong. Harrison nodded. Mr. Hayes is right. James Carlson's law firm was the perfect cover. Military families trusted him with their legal problems, their personal issues. Every piece of information was cataloged and stored. The briefing continued as Harrison detailed the investigation's findings. Lorenzo Humphrey's firm had been raided at dawn, its computers seized, its contracts frozen pending federal review. Florence's foundation offices in 3 states were being searched simultaneously. And Gloria Conley? Colonel Matthews asked, glancing at Kenneth. In federal custody, Harrison replied. She's claiming limited knowledge of the operation, but our evidence suggests otherwise. Dr. Lorraine Cook has agreed to cooperate, providing detailed records of the secret birth and subsequent adoption. Kenneth felt the room's attention shift to him. These were his colleagues, his military family. Some had attended his wedding to Gloria, watched Cassandra grow up, contributed to the Foundation's supposed charitable works. There's more, Harrison continued. We've identified at least 15 other military spouses who received regular payments through the Foundation. Each one had access to sensitive information through their partner's position. The room erupted in angry murmurs. Kenneth recognized names on the list, people he'd trusted, families he'd helped, colleagues he'd recommended to James's firm. The Foundation's financial records are a maze, Harrison explained, displaying complex transaction charts. They used legitimate charitable work to mask their real operations. Every genuine act of assistance came with strings attached. Information gathering, surveillance, compromise. Colonel Matthews cleared his throat. And Cassandra Stone? Her position at Humphrey International? She's cooperating, Kenneth said quietly, providing details about how they identified and targeted vulnerable families. The briefing lasted another 2 hours as they mapped out the scandal's immediate implications. Security protocols would need to be reviewed, clearances re-evaluated, families notified. The military community's trust had been shattered, and rebuilding it would take time. As the room cleared, Harrison held Kenneth back. There's something else you should know. The FBI's forensic accountants found something in Florence's private records. It's about the child, your son. Kenneth's jaw tightened. What about him? He has a rare medical condition. Florence has been using Foundation money to cover specialized treatments. That's part of why she agreed to the adoption. They needed someone with access to substantial funds. The information hit Kenneth like a physical blow. Somewhere in Tennessee, a 2-year-old boy with his DNA was fighting an illness he knew nothing about. The treatments, Harrison continued gently, they're expensive. With the Foundation's assets frozen, I'll handle it, Kenneth interrupted. Quietly. The child shouldn't suffer for their crimes. Later that afternoon, Kenneth sat in his office, staring at the framed photos he'd removed from his desk, his wedding day, family picnics at the lake, Cassandra's law school graduation. Each memory now tainted by questions of what had been real and what had been carefully orchestrated deception. His secure phone buzzed, a message from Maddie Solomon. More financial records had been uncovered, showing years of systematic exploitation. The Foundation's legitimate charitable works had been carefully calculated to provide cover for their intelligence-gathering operations. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Lorraine Cook stood in his doorway, her medical bag clutched like a shield. I brought the records, she said without preamble. Everything about the birth, the adoption, all of it. You deserve to know the truth. Kenneth gestured to a chair, bracing himself for one more layer of betrayal to be peeled away. Outside his window, the base continued its daily routines, but nothing would ever be quite the same. The Foundation's collapse had exposed not just a criminal enterprise, but the fragile nature of trust itself. The private medical facility outside Nashville gleamed in the autumn sunlight, its modern architecture a stark contrast to the rolling Tennessee hills. Kenneth sat in his rental car, Dr. Cook's medical records spread across the passenger seat. Pages of test results, treatment protocols, and progress notes told the story of a little boy's fight against a rare genetic disorder. Florence Kinney's assistant, Robbie Robertson, had reached out through federal channels after learning about Kenneth's anonymous arrangement to continue the child's medical care. Now, sitting in the hospital parking lot, Kenneth struggled with the weight of decisions made by others that had shaped so many lives. His phone buzzed, Agent Harrison providing an update. The FBI's forensic team had discovered that Florence's foundation had directed over $2 million to this facility over the past 2 years, all carefully disguised as general charitable medical support. A tap on his window startled him. Robbie Robertson stood there, his thin face drawn with worry. Kenneth hadn't expected him to come in person. "Mr. Hayes," Robbie said as Kenneth stepped out of the car. "Thank you for coming. And for making sure the treatments could continue." They walked toward the building, Robbie filling the awkward silence with nervous chatter. "He's doing well, all things considered. The doctors are optimistic about the new protocol. Florence made sure he had the best care, whatever else she did wrong." The pediatric wing was bright with cheerful murals and gentle music. Through an observation window, Kenneth saw a small boy with his mother's golden hair and his own determined jaw, focused intently on a puzzle while a nurse adjusted his fore. "That's Matthew," Robbie said softly. Florence registered him as Matthew Kinney. She made sure he would never know about the circumstances of his birth. Thought she was protecting him, I guess. Kenneth watched his son, a child he'd never held, never known existed until the investigation, methodically sorting puzzle pieces. "Tell me about his condition." Robbie pulled out a thick file. "It's called Hurler syndrome, rare genetic disorder that affects multiple organs. Without treatment," he swallowed hard. "Florence found out during the adoption process. That's when she started diverting foundation money for his care." "Why are you telling me this?" Kenneth asked, though he already knew the answer. "Because Florence isn't a monster," Robbie replied. "She did terrible things, helped James and the others exploit people's trust. But everything she did, every dollar she stole, every secret she kept, it was all for him. To make sure he got the treatments he needed." Kenneth thought of the complex web of deception they'd uncovered. She could have asked for help, legitimate help. "Pride," Robbie said simply, "and fear. Once you start down that path of secrets and lies." She thought she could handle it herself. By the time she realized how deep she was in James's operation, it was too late. A doctor approached the observation window, making notes on Matthew's chart. The boy looked up, offering a bright smile that hit Kenneth like a physical blow. It was Gloria's smile, the real one he'd fallen in love with years ago, before the deception began. "The new treatment protocol is promising," Robbie continued, "but expensive. When the foundation's assets were frozen, Florence was terrified the treatments would stop. That's why I reached out. She doesn't know I'm here." "The trust is already set up," Kenneth assured him. "Anonymous, ironclad. The medical bills will be covered." Robbie's shoulders slumped in relief. "You're a better person than any of us deserved, Mr. Hayes. After everything they did to you." "He's an innocent child," Kenneth cut him off. "Whatever else happened, whatever crimes were committed, he shouldn't suffer for it." They watched Matthew work on his puzzle for a few more minutes. A nurse brought him medication, and Kenneth recognized the gentle efficiency in her movements. She cared about her patient, saw him as a child to be protected, not a secret to be kept. "There's something else," Robbie said hesitantly. "After I saw what you did, setting up the trust, I have information about the Foundation's activities. Things Florence told me, records she kept separate from the main files." Kenneth turned to study the assistant's face. "Why come forward now?" "Because you showed mercy when you had every right to be vengeful. The FBI has most of it, but there are details only I know, about how they chose their targets, how they used the information they gathered. I want to make it right." As they walked back to the parking lot, Kenneth's phone buzzed again. Agent Harrison updating him about new evidence, more arrests, the widening investigation. But his mind was still in that hospital room, watching a little boy with his jaw and Gloria's smile fight a battle he'd known nothing about. Mr. Robertson, he said as they reached his car, thank you for letting me know about him. For coming forward. Robbie nodded, understanding the complexities beneath the simple words. He's a fighter, you know. The doctors say he gets stronger every day. Kenneth drove back to his hotel in silence, the weight of the day settling around him. His son would grow up never knowing him, and perhaps that was for the best. But he would have the care he needed, the chance to fight his battles with all the resources Kenneth could provide. That evening, he sat in his hotel room updating his team. Maddie Solomon was tracing the new financial information Robbie had provided. Park was coordinating with FBI surveillance teams. The investigation continued to expand, but for Kenneth, something had shifted. The anger that had driven him since discovering Gloria's messages had been tempered by the sight of a small boy solving puzzles in a hospital room. His phone chimed with a text from Agent Harrison. Robertson's information checks out. More evidence of Foundation's targeting methods. Want to meet to discuss? Kenneth stared at the message for a long moment before replying. Tomorrow. Tonight, I need to process some things. He pulled out Dr. Cook's records again, reading through the medical history of a child who shared his DNA but would never call him father. Somewhere in the complex web of lies and betrayal, an act of mercy had created a small light of truth. It wasn't redemption. Nothing could excuse what they'd done. But it was something real in a world of carefully crafted deceptions. The federal courthouse in Atlanta hummed with tension as Kenneth made his way through security. 6 months had passed since the Foundation raid, and today marked the beginning of the end. The prosecution would present its final arguments in what the media had dubbed the military trust trials. Inside the courtroom, the players and their elaborate deceptions sat in neat rows, transformed by justice into defendants. James Carlson's expensive suit couldn't hide his exhaustion. Florence Kinney clutched a handkerchief, her Foundation's charitable facade long since shattered. Lorenzo Humphrey stared straight ahead, his corporate arrogance finally broken by months of federal investigation. Gloria sat apart from the others, her designer clothes replaced by modest business attire. She didn't look at Kenneth as he took his seat, but he saw her hands tremble slightly as she arranged her notes. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Andrea Martinez, stood to address the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past 6 months, you've heard extensive testimony about the systematic exploitation of military families. Today, we'll review the key evidence that proves beyond doubt the defendant's guilt in this complex conspiracy. Martinez moved with practiced efficiency, displaying documents on the courtroom screens. Bank records showed the intricate web of financial transactions. Surveillance photos captured clandestine meetings. Email trails revealed the careful selection of military families for exploitation. The Foundation, Martinez continued, presented itself as a charitable organization dedicated to supporting military families. In reality, it was a sophisticated intelligence-gathering operation. Every act of charity came with a hidden price: the extraction of sensitive information from vulnerable families. Kenneth watched the jury's reactions as Martinez detailed how James's law firm had served as the perfect cover, gaining access to military families' most intimate problems and secrets. How Lorenzo Humphrey's company had provided corporate legitimacy while facilitating international connections. How Florence's foundation had laundered millions while maintaining a veneer of respectability. And perhaps most disturbing, Martinez said, her voice carrying to every corner of the courtroom, was the calculated use of personal relationships. Gloria Conley, whose marriage to a respected special operations trainer provided access to classified information. Cassandra Stone, whose position was used to identify and exploit wealthy military families. Gloria flinched at the words, but kept her eyes forward. Her lawyer had negotiated a plea deal in exchange for her testimony about the Foundation's operations. Cassandra, facing her own legal consequences, had cooperated fully with federal prosecutors. The defense attorneys presented their final arguments, trying to paint their clients as misguided philanthropists rather than calculated criminals. James's lawyer emphasized his years of legal service to military families. Florence's attorney spoke passionately about the Foundation's legitimate charitable works, carefully avoiding mention of the millions laundered through offshore accounts. During a brief recess, Kenneth stepped into the hallway. Agent Harrison approached, her formal court attire a change from her undercover days as a wealthy widow. "The jury's engaged," she commented. "Martinez did an excellent job laying out the complexity of their operation." Kenneth nodded. "Any word on the additional indictments?" "3 more military spouses arrested this morning. The Foundation's network keeps expanding. Every new piece of evidence reveals more connections." Back in the courtroom, the proceedings continued with impact statements from military families who had been exploited. Colonel Matthews spoke about the damage to base security. Other officers detailed how their trust had been manipulated, their sensitive information compromised. Finally, it was Kenneth's turn to testify. He approached the witness stand, feeling the weight of his community's trust. Martinez led him through his discovery of the deception, his investigation, and the eventual exposure of the network. "And the child?" Martinez asked carefully, following their prepared questions. "Is being cared for," Kenneth replied simply. They had agreed to keep Matthew's medical condition private, protecting at least this one piece of innocence in the whole sordid affair. The verdicts, when they came, were decisive. James and Florence faced federal charges for fraud and money laundering. Lorenzo Humphrey's firm collapsed under scrutiny, its government contracts canceled. Gloria's plea deal resulted in a lighter sentence, but her reputation in the military community was irreparably damaged. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. Kenneth watched from a distance as justice was served in sound bites and headlines. The story would fade from the news cycle, but its impact on the military community would linger. His phone buzzed, a text from Robbie Robertson. "Matthew's latest tests show improvement. The new treatment is working." A small victory in a sea of necessary justice. Kenneth pocketed his phone as Agent Harrison approached. "There will be appeals," she warned. "Cases this complex always do." "Let them appeal," Kenneth replied. "The evidence is solid. The truth has a way of enduring." In the months that followed, the military community began its slow process of healing. Kenneth found unexpected support in the aftermath. Yvette Courtney, who had lost her own marriage in the scandal, approached him with an idea. "We need to rebuild trust," she said over coffee at their regular diner. "Create something genuine from all this deception. A real foundation, one that actually helps military families affected by fraud." Kenneth considered the proposal. It would take time, resources. "I've already spoken with several legitimate donors," Yvette continued. "They want to make this right. And Dana Hansen has offered to oversee all the cybersecurity protocols." The mention of Dana brought a slight smile to Kenneth's face. The cybersecurity expert had become a constant presence in his life, their shared experience in exposing the truth creating a bond that grew stronger each day. "We could do it right this time," Dana added, joining them with her laptop. "Complete transparency, regular audits, real support for military families." The military community's response surprised them all. Officers who had lost trust in charitable organizations stepped forward to help. Families who had been victimized by the original foundation offered their experiences to prevent future fraud. Kenneth's exposure of the corruption earned him respect throughout the military establishment. The base commander recommended him for a promotion to oversee ethical training programs, turning his experience into a teaching tool for future officers. "Your story," Colonel Matthews told him during the ceremony, "will be a cautionary tale at every military base in the country. Not just about corruption, but about the courage to expose it." The legal proceedings continued to unfold. James and Florence faced years in federal prison. Gloria's plea deal resulted in a shorter sentence, but the damage to her reputation was permanent. Cassandra's involvement led to her disbarment before her career could truly begin. One morning, almost a year after the verdicts, Kenneth sat in his new office at the Military Ethics Training Center. The walls held commendations for his role in exposing the corruption, but his eyes were drawn to a different photo, one of his new team at the legitimate foundation they'd created. Yvette coordinating outreach programs, Dana implementing security protocols that protected rather than exploited. A letter arrived that morning, the handwriting achingly familiar. Cassandra, writing from her mother's old lake house where she'd retreated after the scandal. "Dear Dad," it began. "I've spent months trying to find the words. To explain, to apologize, to make sense of my own choices. The truth is, I lost myself in their web of lies. I became someone I never thought I could be. Someone who betrayed not just you, but everything you taught me about honor and integrity. Kenneth read the letter twice, feeling the weight of years of deception and the possibility of redemption. After careful consideration, he wrote back, "The truth isn't just about exposing lies, it's about facing them and learning from them. When you're ready to do that, we can talk." He sealed the envelope, knowing that healing would take time. The scandal had cost him his marriage and stepdaughter, but it had given him something more valuable: a renewed sense of purpose, a stronger moral compass, and a genuine family forged in the fires of truth and justice. That evening, as he left the office, Dana waited by her car. "Ready for the Foundation's board meeting?" Kenneth nodded, falling into step beside her. Together, they walked toward a future built on truth rather than deception, their shared commitment to protecting military families stronger than any elaborate lie. Behind them, the Military Ethics Training Center stood as a testament to lessons learned and trust rebuilt. On his desk, next to Cassandra's letter, lay a report from Matthew's doctors in Tennessee. Another small victory in a story that had found purpose in its pain. The story of the Foundation's corruption would be taught at military bases for years to come, but so would the story of its aftermath, how truth, once revealed, could light the way toward redemption and renewal. Epilogue. 5 years later. The Military Ethics Training Center at Fort Benning. Kenneth Hayes, now 50, studied his reflection in the office window. The years had added silver to his temples, but his posture remained military straight, his eyes still sharp with purpose. "Colonel Hayes?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Your 4 o'clock is here." Kenneth straightened his jacket, fingers brushing the silver eagles on his shoulders. A promotion earned through unwavering dedication to reforming military institutional integrity. "Send them in." The door opened to reveal a group of fresh-faced officers, tablets in hand. His introduction to ethical leadership course had become mandatory for all incoming command staff, the Foundation scandal serving as its central case study. "Today," he began, "we're going to discuss how trust becomes a weapon when placed in the wrong hands." As he spoke, his eyes drifted to the wall of frames behind his desk. News clippings chronicled the aftermath of the scandal that had shaken the military community to its core. Federal sentences upheld for military foundation fraud featured James Carlson being led from the courthouse, his once immaculate suit replaced by Prison Orange. James had received 15 years in federal prison for fraud, money laundering, and exploitation of military families. His appeals had been exhausted, his legal empire dismantled. Recent reports suggested he'd aged decades in just 5 years, his charm evaporating in the harsh reality of incarceration. Florence Kinney had fared slightly better, her cooperation and the revelation about Matthew's medical care earning her a reduced sentence of 8 years. She still had 3 years to serve, though her model prisoner behavior might reduce that further. Kenneth clicked to the next slide, revealing the Foundation's complex web of deception. The exploitation wasn't just financial, he explained to his attentive audience. It was emotional, professional, personal. After class, he gathered his materials, thinking about the latest letter from Gloria. She'd served 4 years before being released to a halfway house in Miami, as far from the military community as she could get. Her attempt to restart her life came with the heavy weight of her choices. No one would trust her with meaningful employment. Her reputation was a perpetual shadow. The second baby, the one Yvette had discovered, had been given up for adoption immediately after birth. Gloria had relinquished all parental rights, another plea bargain chip. Sometimes Kenneth wondered about that child, too, but he'd made his peace with the boundaries of his responsibility. His phone buzzed, a text from Dana Hansen, now Dana Hayes. Their relationship had grown naturally from shared values and experiences, blossoming into marriage 2 years after the trials. Her cybersecurity expertise had transformed the military's approach to information protection, her protocols becoming standard across all branches. Meeting ran long. Dinner at 7? Cassandra's flight gets in at 6. Kenneth smiled, remembering the long road to reconciliation with his stepdaughter. After her disbarment, Cassandra had spent 2 years in intensive therapy, confronting the choices that had led her to betray her values. She'd eventually found purpose teaching ethics at a community college in Oregon, using her own story as a warning about the seductive nature of corruption. The drive home took him past the old foundation building, now housing the Military Family Support Initiative, the legitimate organization he and Yvette had built from the ashes of scandal. Yvette Courtney had transformed her own pain into purpose, serving as its executive director. Her understanding of how charitable organizations could be corrupted made her fierce about maintaining transparency. At a red light, Kenneth checked his secure email. The quarterly report from Matthew's trust had arrived. His biological son, now 7, was thriving under continued medical care. Kenneth had never met him in person, maintaining his distance out of respect for the boy's adoptive family, but he ensured Matthew would always have the support he needed. The house he shared with Dana sat on a quiet street, American flag flying proudly out front. Inside, he found her in their home office, surrounded by screens displaying her latest security protocols. "How's the new firewall implementation going?" he asked, kissing her cheek. "Fort Bragg's system is completely upgraded. No one's getting through this one." She turned, her expression softening. "Ready to see Cassandra? She's bringing her new boyfriend. Another teacher, apparently." Their relationship had been unexpected but felt right. Dana's analytical mind complemented his strategic thinking, her quiet strength matching his sense of duty. Together, they'd built something genuine from the wreckage of deception. The sound of wheels on the driveway announced Cassandra's arrival. She stepped out of the taxi looking professional but relaxed, her years of therapy and self-discovery evident in her confident posture. Behind her, a man with kind eyes carried their bags. "Dad," she called out. The word no longer weighted with guilt. They'd worked hard to rebuild their relationship, spending countless hours in family therapy understanding how they'd both been manipulated by James's network. Over dinner, Kenneth observed his reconstructed family. Cassandra and her boyfriend discussing their teaching careers, Dana describing her latest cybersecurity innovations, all of them sharing stories about their work in protecting and educating others. His phone buzzed again. A message from Russ Park, who had parlayed his role in exposing the foundation into a successful consulting business helping organizations identify internal fraud. "You see the news about James? Denied parole again." Later that evening, after their guests had retired to the guest room, Kenneth sat in his study reviewing files for the next day's ethics class. A photo on his desk showed his new extended family at last year's Christmas gathering: Dana, Cassandra, Yvette, and her new husband, even Sarah Chen, now the lieutenant colonel herself. Another frame held a letter from Robbie Robertson, updating him on the legitimate charitable foundation he now ran in Tennessee. He'd taken the lessons learned from Florence's deception and transformed them into genuine service, his organization becoming a model of transparency and ethical operation. Kenneth opened his laptop to add notes to tomorrow's lecture. The cursor blinked over the title: Trust, Truth, and Transformation. Rebuilding after betrayal. The military community had not just survived the scandal. It had evolved, implementing stricter oversight, better protection for vulnerable families, stronger ethical training. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Cassandra stood in the doorway, looking young in her old college sweatshirt. "Can't sleep," she said. "Too many memories in this town." "Good memories now, too," he reminded her, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. She sat, fidgeting with her class ring, the one she'd earned teaching instead of practicing law. "I saw Mom last month," she admitted. "In Miami." Kenneth waited, letting her find the words. "She's different. Working at a small bookstore, living in a tiny apartment. Says she's finally understanding the damage she caused." Cassandra met his eyes. "She asked about you, about Dana. I told her you're happy." "Are you?" he asked quietly. "Happy?" Her smile was genuine. "Getting there. Teaching helps. Using my story to show others how easy it is to lose your way, how hard but important it is to find it again." Through his window, Kenneth could see the stars over Georgia, the same stars that had witnessed the unraveling of his first marriage and the careful construction of his new life. The foundation scandal had cost him his original family but given him something more valuable: an unshakable understanding of truth's power to destroy and heal. In his inbox, another email waited. The Military Ethics Training Center was expanding, opening branches at bases across the country. His case study on the Foundation scandal would be required reading for a new generation of officers, teaching them to recognize the subtle ways trust could be weaponized. Lorenzo Humphrey, his corporate empire destroyed by the scandal, had tried to rebuild in Europe but found his reputation followed him. He now lived in obscurity, his name a cautionary tale in business ethics courses. The military families affected by the Foundation schemes had mostly recovered, their resilience strengthened by new support systems and protective protocols. The community had learned valuable lessons about verifying charitable organizations and protecting sensitive information. Kenneth turned back to his lesson plans, adding notes about the long-term ripples of ethical choices. Tomorrow, he would stand before another group of officers, sharing not just the story of betrayal but the harder, more important story of rebuilding. Dana appeared in the doorway, 2 cups of tea in hand. Coming to bed soon? He saved his work, thinking about the journey that had brought them here. The pain of betrayal had faded, replaced by the quiet satisfaction of living authentically, of helping others navigate their own ethical challenges. Just finishing up, he replied, accepting the tea. Its warmth reminded him of all the late-night conversations that had helped heal old wounds, with Dana, with Cassandra, with his military colleagues. As they prepared for bed, Kenneth thought about Gloria in her small Miami bookstore, James in his prison cell, Florence counting down her remaining days of incarceration. Their choices had cost them everything they'd schemed to obtain: power, wealth, influence, while teaching others the true value of integrity. The next morning would bring new challenges, more officers to train, more protocols to implement, more lives to influence. But for now, in the quiet of his rebuilt life, Kenneth Hayes understood that the greatest victory hadn't been exposing the Foundation's corruption. It had been proving that truth, however painful, could light the way forward. On his nightstand, a frame held his favorite photo, not of his past life, but of the moment he'd received his promotion to colonel, surrounded by the family and friends who had helped him transform betrayal into purpose. Behind the frame lay Cassandra's latest letter, its closing lines capturing their shared journey. Sometimes the truth costs us everything we thought we wanted, only to give us everything we truly needed. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.